It has been the most durable, noticeable on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis change in my state that I've ever experienced. So I want to switch gears a little bit and mention something that I'm incredibly excited about, which is the most impressive, let's call it mental health intervention that I have encountered in the last 10 years. So as some of you may know, I've been very involved with supporting a lot of research, basic science, and so on related to psychedelic compounds and psychedelic-assisted therapies. That has been because I believe they can really change the lenses through which we look at psychiatry, mental health, and so-called mental disorders completely, due to some of the effect sizes and durability of, say, effects on complex PTSD, treatment-resistant depression, and so on. But I'm actually tool agnostic. Just like with startup investing, I'm looking for uncrowded bets with super high leverage potential outcomes. I'm quite agnostic about the tools. And I will say, and you and I have talked about this privately a little bit, but in the last, let's call it year, especially the last 6 months, I've done a very deep dive on a new iteration of an older technology, which is TMS, Transcranial magnetic stimulation. So this is a type of brain stimulation. The technology has existed for a number of decades, but the protocols and the neurotargeting has advanced really quickly.
There was full subreddits where you could go and learn how to do it yourself at home.
Don't DIY this.
People were literally having burns on their skin from doing it.
This is Darwin Awards territory. Don't do this, guys. In part because you can make things a lot worse if you don't do it the right way. But to jump to the punchline, I have gone through 2 rounds of something called accelerated TMS. And you can learn a lot about this by looking at a number of scientists, including Nolan Williams out of Stanford. I did an interview with Nolan on the podcast for people who want to do a deep dive. And they developed what was previously known, it's gone through some rebranding, the SAINT protocol, which is a very condensed protocol for administering TMS. So you have these magnets, they elicit, in this case, theta bursts. And typically you might have TMS treatments over the span of many weeks, many months. They're compressing 50 sessions into 10 days, or actually 50 sessions into 5 days, excuse me.
Pause for 1 second though. For people that don't know, what does this look like for you? You said magnets. I'm thinking like, I don't know what I'm thinking, but like, what are you actually doing? Are you hooking shit up to your head? Are you in a lab? Are you doing it at home?
You're not doing it at home. So you are in a clinic or lab, and there are different iterations of this. So my first round was with a company called BrainSway, and they use a particular H7 coil. They're developing new technologies. That's effectively a helmet that you then attach to your head with a chin strap, and based on specific targeting, depending on the condition you're trying to address, which could be depression, treatment-resistant depression, could be generalized anxiety disorder, could be OCD, any number of things. Right, ED, sure.
Everybody's got their thing.
If there's magnetic Viagra, then there's a whole new business I need to invest in. So yeah, sure. And then the second round was with Magnus Ventures and a slightly different technology, but it effectively looks like a paddle that is placed on the head. And they use computer vision and pretty sophisticated targeting. But the upshot of this is, going into it, no one will be surprised. I remember when I had my first diagnostic interview with one of these psychiatrists, and we went through this long, multi-hour process, and they said, you score X, Y, and Z, and it seems like you have moderate to severe OCD. And they're like, this might take a little while. I know this is heavy news. If you need to take a break. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, this is a surprise to no one. Like, let's move on. So I went in with pretty high assessment scores for, just to simplify the whole thing, OCD, which looking at my family, you'd be like, yeah, obviously. And then anxiety, and a lot of long-term listeners will know bouts of depression. That also is pretty much kind of genetically hardwired. Did these 2 sessions, and with 3 months so far of durability, no longer meet any diagnostic criteria for any of those. It has been the most durable, noticeable on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis change in my state that I have ever experienced.
Can you give me, or if you care to share, can you give me something like, let's just say on the OCD side, where you were doing it previously, you had the treatments, and now it's no longer
Yeah, I can give examples. And I should say your mileage will vary, and the sample sizes are still very, very small for accelerated TMS, which is, I'm an early stage guy too, right? Like I like to get involved, but there are many unknowns, many open questions. They're still in, I want to say, sub thousands in terms of subjects. In some cases, for say OCD, it's probably fewer than 200 would be my guess. I'm making up some of these numbers, but I don't think they're very far off. So there's still a lot to figure out. But as an example, I've had lifelong onset insomnia where my brain will just not quiet down. My mind is like, I've been waiting all day to talk to you. And and it can take me an hour, 2 hours to fall asleep. In 3 months, that's effectively gone to zero. None of that.
That's crazy.
Like the best sleep I've had in decades.
Do you look at aura data as well to see, like, am I getting the proper deep sleep? Am I getting
I haven't gone super granular. I recognize how that could be helpful in a sense, but I really feel like we can outsource our awareness to devices and metrics where it's pretty
well, when you wake
like
up
if the effect size is large enough, it should be pretty obvious. And I will say, just there are some people who respond inversely to this, right? It can worsen some people's conditions. I've seen a number of lives transformed. We have the most data for depression by far. And if you talk to really competent, sophisticated psychiatrists who've keep abreast of the latest technology, they will say, finally, TMS is delivering on what we hoped it would deliver. Like the promise is finally we're seeing some of the results we were hoping to see.
So there's been so many devices, even at home devices, that claim to do, TMS that you can literally, I've seen them on Amazon.
Yeah.
But here's the real question is like, okay, obviously you did all of the proper due diligence around figuring out who's the best in this business that's actually doing the real science.
Mm-hmm.
How soon until that actually propagates out to clinics where you would feel comfortable saying, okay, now's the time when the average person can go and do this?
It's hard to say. I will say on a widely distributed basis, but that's also like Uber Black got all this criticism early on, and then those people subsidized the development of Uber X, and over time, cost went down. And that's
What's the price?
Well, I would say it ranges at this point because insurance will not cover accelerated TMS, at least as far as I'm aware, from, let's call it, if we're looking at competent, well-trained outfits who are vetted, $5 to $15K for that 5-day period. But here's the thing. Depending on your conditions, depending on your resources, if you were to ask me, how much would you pay to go back 20 years and have this treatment? I'd be like, take half my net worth. It's fine. Like the payoff is so noticeable. Now, it's not a silver bullet, nor are psychedelic assisted therapies, by the way. It's not one shot, one kill with conditions. So most people will go back for boosters every 3 to 6 months for, say, a single day of treatment, not necessarily 5 days. But when I say effect size, people can look this up, but the magnitude of change and durability is so far beyond pretty much any conventional treatment that I can think of, especially if you exclude maintenance therapies that are really just covering symptoms or suppressing symptoms. I'm very, very excited about this. In terms of time, I couldn't tell you. I think that it will be more widely available at retail where people pay out of pocket in the next 6 months to 12 months.
How will someone know if that has been the same thing that you're doing? Is there some type of like certification, or what do you look for? Because I've seen these types of clinics. I've seen it being offered in various places.
Yeah, I would look for people who have real clinical experience, who are working with established hospitals and have some bona fides. there's a lot of fly-by-night TMS operations, just like there are lots of rent-a-shamans on like Craigslist and Facebook who did some weekend yoga course in Costa Rica and suddenly they're going to save your soul. Probably not a great idea. Similarly, if it's like, yeah, we run a dentist's office and we offer TMS, like, maybe you don't do that. Or like the people who are like, yeah, we will fix your nails and give you semaglutide. Like, you mix in the bathroom. Like, maybe you don't do that. So I think, common sense applies, but it has been really fascinating. And the reason you don't want to DIY it, or one of the many, many reasons you don't want to DIY it, is that you're dealing with very sensitive circuitry, right? This whole thing in our heads, as far as I know, is powered on roughly the electricity of a light bulb. We really don't know how it works, how we're able to function at such a high level. I suspect there are all sorts of, and this is true for all faction, but like quantum effects and many, many complicated mechanisms that we just do not understand. And when you're applying a magnetic pulse to your brain, you are, and this is simplified, but you're either activating or deactivating, right? Enhancing or suppressing some degree of activity or a network of activity. And if you screw that up, you can get the opposite of what you're looking for.
Is there any real-time like feeling? Like when you're sitting there, are you like seeing shit?
Feels like someone flicking the side of your head. There are no visuals or anything, but you feel like someone's flicking the side of your head, and each day you feel like you ran a mental ultra marathon. Like if you were cramming for the LSATs every day for 15 hours straight, that is the degree of mental exhaustion. It's very tiring.
Do you find that it's improved your cognitive tasks? Like, are you like able to, like, is there any performance enhancing benefits to this as well?
Well, I do think TMS is going to be used for performance enhancement. I think it could be used for sports enhancement and many things. So I do think, especially in the world of anti-doping and so on, that athletes are going to start to use TMS pre-competition for enhancing, who knows, visual acuity, reaction speed. That's going to happen for sure. Because you can already use TMS to change trait hypnotizability. Like if you want to make people more susceptible to being hypnotized, you can use this. It's going to get super wild really quickly. I will say that one thing I have noticed on the plus or negative side, depending on how you look at it, is that I've been so much less productive in the last few months.
You seem really chill right now.
Yeah, super chill. Here's what I would say. I wouldn't trade the productivity for my current sense of calmness. And I was chatting with a therapist about this, and they said, well, I think for a lot of people, that anxiety is used as a fuel to work, to basically run away from things, not run towards things. And I was like, yeah, I could see that. That doesn't seem shocking to me. So, a question I've tried to ask myself with a lot of different projects is, am I running away from something or am I running towards something? That seems a very important distinction to make. And also, another reason not to DIY this is, in a lot of cases, let's just say in the case of anxiety, so you have too much like fight or flight or freeze, let's just say. So you want to dampen that a little bit so you can move around without being a head case. Okay, great. You still need some of that fight or flight in your life, so you can over dampen that. Or maybe you want to increase your parasympathetic response. This is going to be very personal. I didn't really think I would talk about this publicly, but so there's a shorthand in medical school. They say point and shoot. In other words, parasympathetic to get an erection, sympathetic to orgasm. Both of those are really important. So after I got my sympathetic smashed, I couldn't orgasm for like 2 weeks, and I was freaking the fuck out. I was like, did I just completely screw up my hardwiring? Like I'm never going to orgasm again? That seems like a high tax to pay. Fuck,
Was the engine there?
Scary moment.
Like you didn't have a problem with the
point, no.
No, okay. It was just the finish.
It was the shoot that was the problem, yeah.
Jesus, man.
So like that could freak you out. Or let's say
this is classic Tim Ferriss, like early, like trying the craziest shit.
I'm taking the bullet so other people don't necessarily have to. But these are all reasons why you don't want to buy a kit on Amazon and just start zapping your brain while you're watching Netflix. Yeah. All right.
Unless you're fast and you need to slow down.
Hey, if somebody else wants to run that N01, like knock yourself out, but I'm not going to do that. Anyway,
all right.
Moving on.
So last question, and then we can move on. is there a website or anything where you went? Like, where did you go if someone's listening to this and they're like, I want to go where Tim went?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I would like to have, and this is not for any reason other than I'm going to defer on that just because I want to have some more experience. Also, I want to do a follow-up. I want to see what the durability looks like before I start recommending outfits.
I appreciate that.
So I will do that. I'll have more to say about this. But for people who want to do a deep dive, Dr. Nolan Williams and the podcast that I did with him touches a lot of this. I will also say just a quick note, which is there are some theories around, say, depression, which are not chemically focused. So instead of like, oh, serotonin imbalance, this imbalance, which is a little antiquated in a bunch of senses. It's not that it isn't a non-variable, but it doesn't seem to be the primary determinant. It could be that different structures in the brain are firing out of sequence. And you can use the TMS to correct that sequence. So instead of firing like BAC, it's like, oh, well, let's slightly tweak that system so it's firing in what we see in normal healthies, which is ABC. Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
To be able to basically just reset the tripwire sequence.
Yeah.
So something I think we'll be hearing a lot more about in the next handful of years. And it is better tolerated than most medications. Like from a risk profile perspective, for most people, in very rare cases, it can trigger seizures. Like there are adverse side effect potentials, but for the vast majority, very well tolerated. So I'm excited about it because, for instance, psychedelic assisted therapy is contraindicated for lots of people. There are many people who should not take this or engage in that type of therapy. Too many risks involved. People with, say, borderline personality disorder, with family history of schizophrenia, et cetera, but they wouldn't necessarily be automatically excluded from doing something like accelerated TMS.
Yeah.
So that's exciting to me.